forcing them to change their religion, but they need to give up their supremacy narrative. Now, this has led to a backlash, predictably, from opposition leaders who say that Muslims of India don't need Mr. Bhagwat's permission to stay here. The larger question is twofold. Do monotheistic religions like Islam, Christianity, etc. allow space for non-believers like Hinduism does? Is glorifying past tyrants like Aurangzeb and Tipu Sultan a sign of supremacy and a supreme mindset which needs to be shared? But first, the story of what Mohan Bhagwat said and the political reactions to it.
Months after visiting a mosque in Delhi, RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat said there is no threat to Islam in India. Speaking to RSS-affiliated magazines Organizer and Panchajanya, Bhagwat said, and I quote, "The simple truth is this: Hindustan should remain Hindustan. There is no harm to Muslims living today in Bharat. If they wish to stick to their faith, they can. If they want to return to the faith of their ancestors, they may. There is no stubbornness among Hindus, but at the same time, Muslims must abandon their boisterous rhetoric of supremacy." Unquote. Bhagwat's remarks triggered a political storm, with opposition leaders like Asaduddin Owaisi questioning Bhagwat's authority to comment on where Muslims should live.
असल सुप्रीमेसी तो आपकी है, आप समझ रहे हैं कि हिंदू राष्ट्र है, आप ये दिखाना चाह रहे हैं कि वो आप रूलर है और हम रूल्ड हैं। हम ये कह रहे हैं कि नहीं, हम इक्वल सिटीजनशिप की बात कर रहे हैं, इक्वालिटी की हम बात कर रहे हैं।
At the same time, Bhagwat spoke of a newfound aggression among Hindus in India. He said, and I quote, "Hindu society has been at war for over 1,000 years, and it is all because of this that Hindu society has awakened. It is but natural for those at war to be aggressive. This war is not against an enemy outside, but against an enemy within. So there is a war to defend Hindu society, Hindu dharma, and Hindu culture."
Today we have a government of Prime Minister Modi that is working on the agenda of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. A government that relentlessly is working on development for everyone without distinguishing between any Indian citizen. And that's the correct position.
भारत के कुछ कट्टरपंथी लोग अपनी राजनीतिक रोटियां सेकने के लिए कहते हों कि मेरा मजहब ही सही है, बाकी को इसे स्वीकार करना ही पड़ेगा। ये जो साम्राज्यवादी सोच है, ये जो सुप्रीमेसी वाली थिंकिंग है, इससे प्रत्येक भारतीय को बाहर निकलना पड़ेगा।
So are the RSS chief's remarks aimed at inclusivity, or is it about intimidation?
All right, joining us on the talking point this evening, Charan Singh Sapra is spokesperson of the Congress Party, Shubhrashta is a political analyst, Dr. Nalin Mehta is the author of the book The New BJP, Geeta Bhatt, academic, and Tausif Ahmed Khan, advocate and political analyst, also joining us. Charan Singh Sapra, let me start by asking you, what is your contention or what is your problem with what Mr. Bhagwat has said? He has said that no one should have a supremacist mindset if you're living in a land of equals, in a land where Article 15 says that everyone is equal before the law. The Constitution guarantees that. Why should anyone have a supremacist mindset? What is wrong in what he said?
See, Zaka, let me speak one line in Hindi and thereafter I will carry on. It's like, kahin pe nigahein, kahin pe nishana. Actually, the Mahabharata of 2024 has started, it seems. And Mohan Bhagwat and RSS wants people to believe that they are setting the narrative for the same. Now, let me also remind you, the very leaders of RSS, they have been talking that RSS is a cultural organization or it's a social organization. Then why are they indulging into the majoritarian and authoritarian rule or authoritarian politics or authoritarian statements? Now you also see the chronology of things what are happening. The BJP leader from Karnataka, he says we will contest elections on the plank of love jihad. Pragya Thakur says she gives a call to Hindus to sharpen the knives. Amit Shah, he declares the date of Ayodhya temple 1st January. And thereafter, Mohan Bhagwat's statement, which clearly shows the majoritarian or the authoritarian rule which BJP is doing. So there is a chronology to everything.
No,
and
by saying that no one should have a
ask,
supremacist mindset, how is it authoritarian, I want to know, and how is it majoritarian? And secondly, no one is saying that just because, Amit Shah or Nalin Katil or Mohan Bhagwat is raising one set of issues, that is going to be the dominant issues for 2024. You are well within your right to raise issues that matter, that you think matter to the people, whether it is price rise or joblessness or whatever it is. Nobody is stopping you from doing that.
Yes, Zaka, that's why I said kahin pe nigahein, kahin pe nishana. And the real issues of concern for the people of India are the inflation, price rise, the rising unemployment, the trade deficit, the closure of MSMEs, or the depreciation of Indian rupee.
So, Saprasab, you raised that. You are well within your right to raise that. Who's stopping you from raising that?
Let me complete, na Zaka. Zaka, let me complete, please. If you have called me, listen to me. So that's what I'm saying, that BJP or RSS, they are not interested in answering these questions which people are asking.
Okay.
They just want to hide behind the politics of polarization. They want to hide behind the shield of, divisive politics, and they just want to change the narrative of the country.
They are not worried about the poor people of this country. Let me ask Shubrashta. This is what Mr. Bhagwat said. There is no harm to Muslims living in India, living today in Bharat. If they wish to stick to their faith, they can. If they want to return to the faith of their ancestors, they may. It is entirely their choice. There is no such stubbornness. Islam has nothing to fear. To which politicians like Mr. Owaisi have said that they don't need Mr. Bhagwat's permission to stay in India. Indian Muslims have decided to stay on in India because at the time of partition, their ancestors decided that they will live in a country where all religions are treated equal. They did not want to go to an Islamic republic like Pakistan. And that is not because of the benevolence of Mr. Bhagwat or the RSS.
Right. Thank you, Zaka. Zaka, I think what Mr. Owaisi says has always been about mismeasuring contexts and mismeasuring things which are no longer in public currency. For example, I don't think when Mr. Bhagwat was talking today, he spoke anything about citizenship at all. So the questions that Mr. Owaisi are raising are far-fetched, and actually these are questions which will create two larger divisions in society. Let's listen closely to what Mr. Bhagwat said. He is talking about a fundamental idea of way of life in India. He's talking about, and I don't want to go into details of what Hindutva means and all of that. I don't think there should be a problem with it. See, Zaka, from 1980s onwards, ever since Martin Kramer coined the term political Islam and wrote books and subsequent articles about it, it has sparked a debate world over on the supranational nature of political Islam. Now, this is for if people believe in Islamic academics taking center stage in Indian politics today, then I think they need to make themselves clear what is the version of Islam that they want to follow. Do they believe in nationalism? Do they have supranational ambitions? These are questions that will be confronted
again,
with.
Shubrashta,
I disagree with Mr. Sapra when he says...
Shubrashta, by saying that, you are again saying that Muslims of India need to prove their nationalism. Why? They are as much Indian citizens as you are or I am or anyone else is.
I don't want to be misconstrued, Zaka, so allow me to explain myself in 30 more seconds. No, I am not saying that Muslims need to prove their nationalism at all. I am just saying that in a vitiated atmosphere, when a large section of Muslim majority feels that they are maybe insecure in the Indian soil, or maybe the new government is trying to clamp down upon them, I think the academics in the Muslim world need to come together and identify for the larger benefit of the public what their views on nationalism is. It doesn't make them anything less national. It doesn't make them less national.
Okay.
It doesn't make them less patriotic. For sure, I mean, people like us who have grown up listening to stories of partition, we have known that if there was a Muhammad Ali Jinnah, there was a Maulana Abul Kalam Azad who absolutely detested, abhorred partition and took cudgels with Nehru against that.
Dr. Nalan Mehta,
there's no question, there's no
the
question
other things,
of doubting Muslim
let me go on to our next
nationalism.
guest. Dr. Nalan Mehta, one of the other things that Mr. Bhagwat said, and I want to quote again, this war is not against an enemy outside, but against an enemy within. So there is a war to defend Hindu society, Hindu dharma, Hindu culture. Foreign invaders are no longer there, but foreign influences and foreign conspiracies have continued. So since this is a war, people are likely to get overzealous. Although this is not desirable, yet provocative statements will be uttered. Again, opposition is saying that, instead of saying this will only fan the flames that have been lit by the likes of a Pragya Thakur. Now, why doesn't the RSS chief come out and say that what Pragya Thakur said, asking or exhorting Hindus to keep their weapons ready, if he condemned that, that would have sent an unequivocal signal to people like her. Instead, by saying this is overzealousness, it may not be desirable, but provocative statements will be continued to be uttered. Isn't he fanning the flames? Isn't he sending a signal to these elements that aapko jo marzi bolna hai bolo?
No, Zaka, in fact, I think that this is a very important interview by the RSS Sarsang Chalak. In fact, I think this is a signal from the Sangh that that for those who overstep the line, for the extremist elements on the Hindutva right to pipe down. The context of his entire statement in the interview was do you think that there is too much aggression happening, so too many aggressive statements happening from within Hindus, and his answer was specific to that. In fact, he alluded to Shivaji Maharaj. He specifically spoke about the fact that's when he spoke about this 1,000-year war, which is the Sangh's view on this, where he specifically said that look, there was a time when this happened, but right now we are in a position of dominance, and he was speaking about Hindus in particular and how the Sangh views that. He says that because of that, there was a time, and he specifically talked about the Ram Janmabhoomi movement as well, saying that a slogan was formed, there was a movement, but now a temple is being made, Hindus are secure, so therefore you cannot have the same rhetoric of aggression. So therefore, and he actually said people should introspect within. In fact, in many ways, it was almost like a Deng Xiaoping statement that we now need to look at the next step forward, and you don't need to have the same rhetoric of aggression as before. And in
but did he say anything that would send out a signal to these elements? You can call them fringe, mainstream, whatever, elected representative from Bhopal. I don't know how fringe he is, but did he say anything in that interview that sends out a signal to these people that look, you cannot be making or seen to be making these provocative statements? Was there anything in that interview?
He did not specifically mention. He did not specifically mention the representative from Bhopal, but he made a generic statement that this kind of aggressiveness is not necessarily conducive.
Okay.
Now they might have been private messages sent out, but in the overall context, in the way that this was said, the length at which he spoke about, I think this is an unequivocal signal from the Sangh to extremist elements to pipe down. Or whether this is enough or not is we'll have to wait and see.
So let me ask Tausif Ahmed Khan. You know, supremacist statements have been made from Muslim leaders as well. I just want to give you a compilation of quotes. Waris Pathan says in February of 2020, हम सिर्फ 15 करोड़ हैं लेकिन 100 करोड़ पर भारी रहेंगे, ये याद रखना. Akbaruddin Owaisi of the MIM says, we ruled this country for 800 years. 225 करोड़ मुसलमान हैं, हमें 15 मिनट ही चाहिए विदाउट पुलिस टू शो 100 करोड़ हिंदू की हम क्या कर सकते हैं, कौन ज़्यादा पावरफुल है. There is a MIM leader from Uttar Pradesh who says, for 832 years, worms and insects like you have been ruled by us. Now, this is exactly the supremacist attitude and statements that Mr. Bhagwat is saying you need to come out of that mentality. I mean, who is to tell Akbaruddin Owaisi, who is to tell Waris Pathan that this is exactly what is fanning the flames of hatred and division in this country?
No, these statements cannot be taken out of context. You see, these statements are for the election purposes, are jumlas and nothing more than that. Just like Modi ji came and promised 15 lakh rupaye aa jayenge, sabke account mein mujhe pradhan mantri bana do. It was nothing more than a jumla. So similarly, these statements are nothing more than a jumla. Why should people who now feel, if for example, if we have to talking about Mr. Bhagwat very well knows that in India there is a rule of law, rule of constitution. If constitution does not make any one caste supreme over another, then how can these political statements make any difference? And if for any reason Mr. Bhagwat wants to send out a message, and if when he said that Muslims are safe, then I think Mr. Bhagwat is trying to play a role of an elder brother, but somehow failed to send a strong message to his younger sister like Sagvi Pragya, who keeps on making provocative statements.
No, but
I think a strong
isn't this these statements
these
statements that I read to you, do they not indicate a certain supremacist sort of bent of mind? You can say it was made in election context. What about when somebody goes to the mazar of Aurangzeb? What about when somebody praises Tipu Sultan? I mean, these are tyrants who have killed tens of thousands of people. You are in a way fanning a certain supremacist mentality. Tausif's line is lost. All right, I'll go to Geeta Bhatt. When the RSS chief talks about supremacist attitude, there is supremacist attitude in the right as well. I mean, this for a number of years. I mean, you had a member of parliament calling for quote unquote economic boycott of a community. Isn't that supremacist attitude?
Well, Zaka, if you go through the interview of Mohan Bhagwat ji, one can see very clearly that he has said that this supremacist attitude should not be there in any community. He says that even if a Hindu feels like that, has a superior, that is wrong. Even the communists, everyone has to, give up. And he, time and again, has reiterated that we need to have a balanced approach in a community life in this country, and that being in conflict with each other is not something that is going to help. The point is that for a very, very long time, for the last couple of years, there has been an ecosystem which has been time and again trying to portray across the globe that the minorities are not safe in this country, that they are being targeted. And it is in this context that it is being said that, that this is the community is free to live, is safe over here. But yes, it is definitely true that there has been a past history in this country which we cannot deny. We can't close our eyes to that. And in that context, he refers to Chhatrapati Shivaji, that how, he even at times, he went to the Golconda Fort and, and the rural over there, he tried to talk to him and put up a condition that we are going to have peaceful relations, but subject to that that you will be having 2 Hindu ministers, and that you will stop all the atrocities on the Hindu community which are living under your periphery.
All right, Tawseef is also back. Tawseef is also back. Again, I just want to expand on what Akbaruddin Owaisi said. We ruled over you for 800 years. What else proof do you want of our identity? Charminar, Taj Mahal, Jama Masjid, Qutub Minar, Red Fort were built by our ancestors, but not by theirs. Who is drawing the distinction here? Who is drawing the distinction of different lineage, different ancestors? Mr. Bhagwat is saying whatever your faith be, whether you're Muslim or Christian or Jain or Buddhist or Hindu, you are all Hindu because it is an ethno-cultural identity. Mr. Akbaruddin Owaisi says your ancestors did not build all of this, it's our ancestors who built that. So who's creating the supremacist attitude?
No, you see on one side you have the entire brigade of the radicals who say that Muslims should go to Pakistan, they do not belong here, this is our country. And on one side, if you get an answer who reminds those radicals that, look, we have been living in this country for over 800 years. India saw one of its golden era. India saw under Akbar's rule, under Mughals Akbar's rule, India's GDP was doing way much better than it is in the third world country now. So if you take things out of context and try to say that, Muslims have a supremacist mindset, I mean, what can people say about that? Only a person who suffers from inferiority complex would allege somebody else that
this whole comparison that India was a great land when Akbar was ruling. I mean, our GDP was great when the British were also ruling. So that can't be a comparison. No, that can't be a comparison. But anyway, I believe. 1 second. Give me 1 second. Give me 10 seconds. Give me 10 seconds, Tawseef. I believe we have a soundbite. I don't know if this is part of the interview that Mr. Bhagwat gave, but this is a soundbite from Mr. Bhagwat expanding on whatever he has said in that interview. Let's play that out and then I'll come back to our guest.
भाव कहने से इस्लाम की पूजा को कोई बाधा नहीं आती. हिंदू हमारी पहचान है, राष्ट्रीयता है, हिंदू हमारी प्रवृत्ति है, सबको अपना मानने की, सबको साथ लेकर चलने की. मेरा ही सही, तुम्हारा गलत, ऐसा नहीं. तुम्हारी जगह तुम्हारा ठीक है, मेरे जगह मेरे ठीक है. झगड़ा क्यों करें, मिलकर चले, यही हिंदुत्व है. तो उसके मानने वाले लोगों की संख्या बनी रहती है तो भारत एक रहता है और वो भारत दुनिया को एकता की ओर ले जाता है. ये केवल भारत की बात नहीं है, मानव कल्याण की बात है. आप कल्पना करें कि इस विश्व में हिंदू समाज अगर गायब हो जाता है तो क्या होगा इसका. सब लोग किसका प्रभुत्व दुनिया पर, इसके लिए झगड़ा करेंगे, कर ही रहे. तो गारंटी किससे है? गारंटी हिंदू से है. हिंदुस्तान बना रहे, सीधी बात है. इसमें जो आज हमारे भारत में मुसलमान हैं उनको कोई नुकसान नहीं. वो है, वो रहना चाहते हैं, रहे. पूर्वजों के पास वापस आना चाहते हैं, आए. उनके मन पर है. हिंदुओं में ये आग्रह है नहीं. इस्लाम को कोई खतरा नहीं है. हाँ, हम बढ़े, हम एक समय राजा थे, हम फिर से राजा बनना, ये छोड़ना पड़ेगा. हम ही सही बाकी सब गलत, ये छोड़ना पड़ेगा। हम अलग हैं इसलिए हम अलग ही रहेंगे, हम सबके साथ मिलकर नहीं रह सकते, ये छोड़ना पड़ेगा। किसी को भी छोड़ना पड़ेगा। ऐसा सोचने वाला कोई हिंदू है उसको भी छोड़ना पड़ेगा, कम्युनिस्ट है उनको भी छोड़ना पड़ेगा। हिंदू भाव कहने से
All right, so you heard the soundbite. This is the same soundbite from that interview. It's now, we have it on camera. It's been released by organizer. So now tell me, Charan Singh Sapra, what he's basically saying is, whether it is Muslim or Hindu or even communist for that matter, if you feel that your ways are better or supreme than other people's ways, उस mentality को आपको छोड़ना पड़ेगा, उस thought process को आपको छोड़ना पड़ेगा. That is what he has said.
See, I would have appreciated if Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, he could have quoted the Constitution of India. You know, the very first page of Constitution of India speaks about secularism, speaks about we the people of India. It doesn't mention any particular religion or any particular caste. So I would have appreciated if he would have quoted the Constitution of India, but deliberately he might not have gone to that subject because they believe in Manusmriti also. And let me also remind you that Guru Golwalkar, he was never with the idea of inclusive India. He had in fact said that Muslims and Christians are from the foreign races. So somewhere in RSS also, somewhere in Mohan Bhagwat also, the cult of Guru Golwalkar is still continuing. I also remember that they had opposed tricolor. In this very newspaper or the magazine Organizer, it had printed on 14th August 1947 that this tricolor having three colors is a bad omen. It's a evil and this country will not go ahead, and the whole country should bow in front of saffron and not in front of tricolor. This is what Guru Golwalkar had said, and it was written in Organizer also.
These are
So there
attacks.
so many
These are old
answer.
attacks that the Congress and other opposition have raised on the RSS and BJP. But Nalin Mehta, is there also realization within the BJP? Forget about everything else. Even electorally, they may have reached the peak of what is possible, because if you need to expand, you need to bring in new electorates. You need to bring in new vote banks. Is this a realization that you need to come across as appealing to larger cross sections of society if you need to win more elections? Because every political party, every vote bank, every strategy has a certain saturation point. Has that saturation point come?
So I think this has been a debate within the BJP for a while now, for the last few months. We saw reflections on this after the Gyanvapi Masjid controversy as well. If you remember, as you would remember, the RSS Sarsanjalak also gave a statement on that to pipe down tempers at that point, saying that we shouldn't start looking for shivling everywhere while the dispute remains. It should be done and so on. I think we should also see this in the larger context of the outreach to Pasmandas, which was done at the last BJP National Executive in Hyderabad, with the Prime Minister reaching out in that sense. Now, where these initiatives go, we have, there's a lot of politics to be played out in that. But there's no question that there is a debate at the highest levels of the BJP on while there is a polarization and there is a Hindutva vote and all of that, that what do you do beyond that, and what are the lines did you draw? And I think this statement is a very significant one in that debate, in the evolution of that debate. For the next phase of what beyond this.
So then let me ask Shubhrasta, how much of this is in the context of, obviously 2023 is a big year for India. India is hosting the G20. It's like a coming of age, if you will, of this ancient civilizational state. It is making its presence felt in the International Committee of Nations. Many would say regaining its rightful place in the Committee of Nations. At a time such as this, you cannot have this image that 15 crore people of your own people are feeling like second-class citizens.
Yes, Zaka, I agree with you. And with respect to G20, this chance would have come to India any which way because it's based on rotation. So I wouldn't read too much into it. But the point that you are raising is very valid, which is why I said that in the context that a conversation on political Islam, especially in India, has been raging and has been becoming and has started becoming vitiated now. I think it is time for intellectuals across both the aisles to sit together and come to a common consensus. I don't think it's a problem. For example, I'll tell you a very small thing which is happening in today's debate as well. Tausif says that the word secularism, and he tries to put in a lot of primacy on the word secularism in the Indian constitution, and I think all of us who believe in the Indian constitution believe that we are secular today, but some of us might not be comfortable with the way in which secularism and socialism was inserted in the constitution during emergency. Can we have a conversation about it without making it communal is a simple question that as intellectuals of new India we need to think about.
No, so again, Tausif, if you go back to what Mr. Bhagwat said, he said the reason why there is communal amity, why there is peace and tolerance is because Hindustan, Hindu Rashtra hi rahe, ya Hindustan rahe. It is because of the Hindus that we are secular. Not because the Muslims or the Christians wanted India to be secular, it's because the Hindus wanted India to be secular. That's why we are a secular country, and that's why there is peace and amity. If that changes, and he's gone into this thing about population imbalance and so on, but his larger point is, if that changes, that basic thread changes, then India will no longer remain a secular country, no longer remain a country of peace and amity between communities.
No, that statement of Mr. Bhagwat itself is hateful. He is saying that we are secular, we are living peacefully because Hindu society is secular. In other words, he says that the rest of the other societies are not secular, rest of the other societies are not so good, according to his own statements. That's the wrong statement.
No, but Tausif, how can you have a secular country, a country where all religions are treated equal, if 80% of the population does not believe or does not want it to be secular? So let's be clear. It's because the 80% want India to be secular that India is a secular country.
Because the constitution says so. Because we fought the independence. All the community in India fought for the independence and got this constitution for ourselves.
Nobody is denying that. But Tausif, Tausif, the point is the constitution is not a document that. Constitution is not a document that just burst out of the heavens, right? Constitution was written by our forefathers who were drawn from our society, from among Hindus, Muslims, Christians, etc. Right? And it is them who decided that it has to be a secular country. And if a large majority of India did not want India to be a secular country, I'm sorry, we would not be a secular country. The fact is that the large majority of this country wants it to be secular. That is why we are a secular country.
No, the majority then in 1947 or 1950 constitution was adopted. The majority of the people in the parliament, the majority of people of India wanted this country to remain a secular and wanted our constitution to remain secular. Okay. And that is why we have. So today, Mr. Bhagwat cannot come and say, paint it with any other line.
Okay, I'll give Geeta Bhatt the final word. Again, what is of concern is people like Tausif and others can turn around and say, today the larger fear is coming from people like a Sadhvi Pragya or a Nalin Katil who say, I mean, how can an elected politician say, don't ask us questions about roads and bridges, these are small matters, the bigger matter is love jihad?
Well, Zaka, you see all aspects, all these aspects have their own importance. But the point here, which Mr. Tausif was raising, it was in the 7th century in Chiraman Mosque, first mosque outside the Arab world, where even when Prophet Muhammad was alive, it was built in India because it was a Hindu king who had given the land to build a mosque in Kerala. And there are innumerable such examples. Along with it, we also have a side where we see that there are a large number of nations in this world which are Islamic nations.